I don't really know who else to turn to at this point. I know we've had our problems in the past, and maybe we've all sort of left you in the darkness over the years and questioned you, and maybe we shouldn't have. But now more than ever, we really need you. You have this special power, you have this gift, and you can change things. I've seen it. We've all seen it, and what you can do. If somehow you could create this special edition of The Force Awakens where switch the scene, Han Solo could take the lightsaber from Kylo Ren and stab him instead, saving his life, that could bring balance to Star Wars. That could do some good. I don't care what else you do. You can put Jar Jar in the movie. I don't care. But we need you. Help us, George Lucas. You're our only hope. And scene. I'm very sad that Han Solo is dead. December 2015. This will go down as the period of time when the world is mourning Han Solo. It's a big deal, I think, but I guess I'll get to that soon enough. This is my spoiler discussion of Star Wars Episode 7, The Force Awakens. I did a review that was fairly spoiler-free, but, like, I don't know, spoilers kind of subjective term. Don't want to give away, obviously, the big things like Han Solo's fucking death, which is devastating. But, I talked about the movie in a fair amount in that video. At the same time, when you do, like, a spoiler-free, you don't want to kind of, I don't know, be like, things happened in the movie. They were good. I can't go into detail, but I thought they were good. Anyway, so let's talk about the movie a little bit. And one thing I kind of went into without being able to go into too much detail about my specific concerns after now having seen the new movie was the whole storytelling aspect of the original Star Wars trilogy, where it's like, okay, the story has ended. Looking at Return of the Jedi, it ended things nicely. We had the resolution of father and son. Vader had kind of reached his arc where he became redeemed, and the Emperor was killed, and the Empire had presumably fallen. And we have Han and Leia together, and they're living happily ever after, I guess. And we kind of make the assumption that, okay, so the Jedi has returned. Return of the Jedi, that's the title of the movie. Things are going to be good once again. Things are going to be the way they should be. And so to close the chapter, or close the entire book on that, kind of just leaves it up to your own imagination without really having anything tangible. But now we have something tangible, which comes with problems. Just in general, like, it's, come on, it's kind of a bummer, like, we have to go through this stuff, like, since the stories continue, since the original characters are back, even though we get new characters, it's like, kind of like, oh, how much of a bummer can we make this movie? Like, oh, Luke has gone missing, he's vanished, Han and Leia are estranged. It's like, come on, do we need that? Do we need that harsh dose of reality in our Star Wars movies? But, whatever. There is an interesting kind of story going on in between these movies that we just kind of like hear about, where, yeah, exactly as we could have predicted to happen, Luke kind of sets off on, let's bring the Jedi back. Let's start training some fucking kids, and getting little Padawans and younglings and things like that. And so that's exactly in very small doses what we learn about this whole 30 plus bracket of time that's been kind of going on. But something goes wrong, and one of his Jedis in training kind of turns to the dark side, is seduced by supreme leader or great leader or super duper leader Snoke. In my last video I said spoke, so sorry, I misspoke. Snoke is his name, played by Andy Serkis, who we see in the hologram in a similar fashion as Emperor Palpatine, and we get little glimpses of him. So maybe we'll see quite a bit more in the movies to come, I'm sure. I train these kids, and one of them turns to the dark side, becomes a force to be reckoned with, and it just so happens that this kid is Ben Solo, the son of Princess Leia and Han Solo. So that devastates Luke. He feels guilty, feels responsible for kind of starting him off on that path, and I guess he just can't live with himself with that. And he goes away, goes to try and find uh, kind of the source of the Force itself, the first Jedi Temple, which is kind of, at least as far as I know, uh, a new concept which in these movies, which is interesting. Like, even though we see in the prequels, Jedi temples and Jedi councils and Jedi sitting and talking, all that fun stuff, really fun stuff. But this is kind of the first that we heard. There's a deeper history that the characters within this universe want to explore themselves. So that's interesting. So it is this interesting story that's kind of gone on behind the scenes, which I'm sure could make for, a TV series that Disney will produce or get, a cartoon make out of it, whatever. But, I mean, it is kind of this whole struggle that you feel of, do I want to just end it at Return of the Jedi and see them live happily ever after? But here it's like, man, that's a bummer. Like, Han and Leia, their kid's a real fucking asshole. And of course, it ultimately amounts to Kylo Ren killing Han Solo in a great scene. I mean, let's talk about that scene a little bit. I've been watching a lot of spoiler reviews of people's reactions to that and kind of like what was going on in their mind at the time. I feel very bad for anybody who had that spoiled for them, because it came pretty much out of nowhere for me. But I'll share the same sentiment that a lot of other people do. Once they go onto the super duper Death Star, and Han Solo sees Kylo Ren there, and he calls out Ben, and it's from that moment you're like, okay, this is a very familiar type of mood that they're setting up here. This is Han Solo's big death scene, and that's exactly what it was. And even worse, even if, say, right at the very moment, it catches you off guard, like once he gets pierced by the saber, it's still just, it's probably even worse if you like can see it coming right at that point, because it's like, it's coming, it's coming, it's coming. So it's kind of an edge of your seat thing, and it's an emotional scene because, I mean, with Han Solo in this movie, I mean, Harrison Ford kind of comes back to the role swinging. I mean, a lot of people have said, "Yeah, this is the Han Solo I know. This doesn't feel like crazy old Harrison Ford." No, Harrison Ford's cool. I like Harrison Ford, but it's like, yeah, he does feel. Obviously, he does kind of have a lot of the traits that we recognize, and he's kind of almost like midlife crisis Han Solo, where he's going back to his old ways, smuggling ways, which is kind of fun to see. But at the same time, it's like, come on. And he's like, oh, Han Solo, I'm not paying these guys. I never met these guys. There's these other guys. Haha. Oh, Han Solo. But whatever. Anyway, so his whole story is kind of like, okay, so obviously during this whole time he's been just kind of in a similar way to Luke, I guess, just like kind of off on his own. And same with Leia. She says the line, "Oh, I'm back to doing what I do best, and so are you." So that's pretty much, they've all, I guess, essentially, when you think about it, with this movie, all three of the main characters find themselves exactly where they were in the first movie, which is kind of interesting. Leia is, leading her resistance. Han is smuggling, and Luke is out somewhere alone. Which, hey, that's kind of nice. But anyway, so he has this whole arc where it's like he sort of takes on the mentor role, very kind of quick breakneck kind of pace within this movie, because we have the new characters, Rey and Finn. They get introduced, and he kind of has like a buddy relationship with Rey a little bit, and with Finn too. He's like giving him advice, like, women always find out, because he's trying to trick her into thinking he's in the Resistance because he's attracted to her, or maybe he's not, or maybe he just finally finds a real human for once, and it's kind of, he doesn't know how to adjust to it, doesn't know how to react to it. So we have Han Solo in that role, and he does a great job in kind of sort of an unimportant role, where he's just there to kind of have fun. As I mentioned in the previous review, he serves as almost like a reminder that, yeah, this is a silly movie. The guy's talking to a big dog, basically. He's spouting out his silly lines here and there. He's playing with the weapons. He's like, oh, I like this weapon, kapow, kapow, and it's all fun. And he's just kind of like half grinning at the screen the whole time. When they show the schematic of the super duper Death Star, he's like, oh, so it's bigger. We can blow it up. Who cares? You know, whatever. One of my favorite lines was, "Oh, and you're cold too," when they're out in the snow with Chewbacca, and yeah, whatever. But anyway, the point I'm getting at is here. What's kind of gone on between these movies? This story is able to give way to what ultimately happens with Han Solo here, where there is, the unfortunate thing about the movie and kind of what I was hoping for with if we were going to get a new series was the friendship between the characters, which I thought was a staple of the original trilogy. Han, Luke, and Leia, this kind of great trio that formed. The fact that all three of them are not going to cross paths again in these new movies, I feel, just in terms of the story that was presented to me, to us, I felt was disappointing, and I kind of have to accept it in terms of how the story was written itself. I felt maybe was a missed opportunity. Not that I could say I can write this better. Let me tell you how I can write it better. But you still feel that friendship, and you feel that once whatever Han Solo has been fucking doing in all these years since his son has turned to the dark side, since he's been estranged from Leia, since he's been smuggling, hanging out with Chewie, probably having a good time. I mean, Chewie's his best buddy, and they're a great team. But whatever he's been doing, he's kind of maybe lost his way, and a way that he kind of felt himself, a path that he felt himself on, starting with the first Star Wars movie, where he was this apathetic type of character. He was kind of this look out for myself and myself only type of character in the first Star Wars, and he developed a conscience, he developed a heart, he developed a friendship. So I think seeing Rey and Finn kind of inspired a new hope in him, so to speak, and he kind of realizes everything that kind of Luke was fighting for, wanted to do, and kind of looking at him with fondness. I mean, it's a great trailer line, obviously, like, it's true, the Force, the Jedi, all of it. It's a great, catch your attention line, but there is, truth to that, where this is definitely, a character that has gone through changes, obviously. Let's hope that any character would go over changes over decades. So finally, this whole series of events that inspires him, and plus with Leia saying, if you see our son, bring him back home. Kind of makes him go to make that sacrifice, to take one final shot at getting his son back, and it's a moving scene. It really is. I mean, sure, they schlock it up a little bit. They play the music. The music is really good. The music sounds very similar to in Return of the Jedi, when like Luke's like wailing on Darth Vader when he's like, maybe I can turn your sister. It sounds very similar to that. Great John Williams music. And I don't know, it's an unfortunate but I'd say fitting end. I don't want this character to die, but he does. Anyway, I feel like I've been rambling on for about 10 minutes about how Han Solo's dead, and that's a bummer. So anyway, maybe I'll move past that. So we have Kylo Ren, who I feel is an intriguing villain. I think I have a lot of problems with the movie. If you go into this movie and you're like, it was perfect, it was the best movie ever, then great. But I mean, at the same time, you're gonna find faults in it, especially Star Wars fans. Star Wars fans will find faults in any way possible, and I feel I've found some faults. But let me tell you, villain, I thought they did really good. Kylo Ren, I thought, was the perfect type of new generation type of villain, where of course we're kind of branching off on the ideology and kind of the spirit of Darth Vader. He's, very obsessed with, I will finish what you started, grandfather, holding his grandfather's charred head, where, like, how do they preserve that exactly? Like, do they, like, spritz it up a little bit every now and then? Does he, like, hold it in some compartment and just whip it out every so often? Whatever. And, like, does he talk to his Force ghost? Because, like, you gotta figure, Luke saw the Force ghosts at the end of Return of the Jedi. You'd think if Kylo Ren got seduced to the dark side, he'd be like, listen, I have someone who wants to talk to you a little bit. Can you, like, listen, Sebastian Shaw, Hayden Christensen, whoever, just come here, tell him you don't want me to do this. You're good now. I don't know, but whatever. What about that, JJ? Anyway, he's obsessed with being the next gen Darth Vader basically, but he's still kind of a green type of character. He's not fully trained in the Force. And he has his weaknesses on his sleeve, basically. Like, there are very funny scenes, where we get the sense that this guy's kind of a joke. Like, we have the Hux character who's always undermining him at every step. I know a lot of people kind of say, yeah, he's sort of like the Grand Moff Tarkin of the new generation, which fair enough, he kind of is. But like even like the stormtroopers, like there's that one great scene, of course, laugh out loud funny scene, where he's ripping apart another room with his lightsaber, and they're walking by, and they're just like, oh, and then they walk away, and it's like, yeah, okay, they get it. This stuff probably happens quite a bit under Kylo Ren's reign, which is not to take away from the intimidation as a villain that he has, but compelling aspects, because he does, like in that scene with Han Solo, you do feel his struggle between light and good. Like you don't feel like he was just putting on a ruse the whole time just because he can kill him, but at the same time, it's like right in that moment with his father, he's struggling with good and bad. Father doesn't want to push too much. He wants to guide his son, wants to bring his son home, wants to see his son's face. But he loses that internal struggle, unfortunately. And I think that's, unfortunately, again, I've been watching quite a few different reviews talking about the movie, speculating about the movie. But I think that's a point of no return, I'd say. Because a lot of people are saying, oh, well, let's hope to see maybe this new trilogy, this new series, wind up with Kylo Ren's redemption, which would be nice, but I think that's just too foul a move. Killing your own father, I mean, geez, that's too much. You don't redeem from that. Even like Anakin Skywalker killed all those fucking kids, but I don't know. That's the point of no return. So I think this really establishes him as sort of a desperate villain, as a villain with nothing really to lose at this point. No anchors to real life, just the dark side, just dark. So I don't think there's any good in him any longer. I think he's going to get worse as it goes along. So there's that. But I thought Adam Driver did a really good role. The voice was a little silly at some points, but it's at the same time it was kind of cool too. Like, this is something where you kind of hope this is what the Bane voice would have been in The Dark Knight Rises, where it's like, with Bane is like too, I don't know, circus entertainer kind of voice, which, Tom Hardy he was fine doing that voice, but here it's like just kind of like this muffled robotic voice, and you kind of wonder, why is he wearing this mask? Is it to focus his force powers, or just to hide his face? But kind of the twist is in that one scene where he's interrogating Rey, it's like, why don't you take off the fucking mask? What are you afraid of, motherfucker? I'm quoting actual dialogue. And he takes it off, and it's like, oh, surprise, just a normal looking person. So I thought that was interesting, and I think, I don't know, he serves better as a character without the mask, in my opinion. But the mask is pretty cool too. I really love the showdown between them at the end, where we have Rey, we have Finn, they're all kind of stumbling over the lightsaber, and that's a great scene, because one, Han Solo has just died, it's very tragic, but like everything, the plot is still going, and like the tension's still high, but now we're like, get that fucker Kylo fucking ready, fucking kill Han Solo, and you want her to give him a piece of her mind, basically. And well, first it's like Finn who brings up the lightsaber, and he gets beat up pretty quickly, so it's more about Rey and Ren, and like Kylo, he's bleeding, it's like boom, 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 and that's pretty cool. It's a really intense, really raw lightsaber battle, and he has a cool lightsaber, and I thought that was all good, and really what it's all about is about if you can bring the movie, obviously it leaves a lot of things open because it's a series, it's a serial, whatever. I think the fact that Ray finally kind of decides, okay, I'm going to take this lightsaber and I'm going to do what I got to do. I think that at least kind of resolves at least this sort of mini portion of her character, because she is all about wanting to stay where she is. So sort of like opposite of Luke, where he wants to get away, but she wants to stay. They are stuck. Either way, they're both stuck in a certain way. But it's all about her kind of confronting her own destiny. There are complaints about, how does she learn to be a Jedi so quickly? Well, a lot of people have pointed out, though, it's alluded to in like that little vision that she has, that she's likely among those who were being trained by Luke, but maybe she didn't remember, maybe something traumatized her, what have you. So I think she's able to pick up on things that were already there. So she's able to work with the Force and do her mind tricks, and like, you will undo these constraints and you will leave with the door open, and you will drop your gun. And, like, I will undo these restraints and I will leave with the door open, and yeah, I'll drop my gun. And I thought that was a pretty funny scene, and apparently that's Daniel Craig doing the voice of that stormtrooper in that scene. But anyway, we have Rey, and she's finally, learning to let go of what she was kind of holding on to, just kind of staying put, and she's going on this adventure, just like, it's the hero's journey. She's leaving her normal home to, be the hero, basically. So there's that. So I thought, at least with that scene, though it kind of like cops out a little bit, it's like, oh, the ground beneath us is moving, and oh, we'll have to fight another day. Still, it's like, at least there is that resolution to it, which I liked. I had much more problems with the way they specifically ended it, which was like, okay, so the whole movie, it's about, literally the whole movie is, the concept is, there's this map hidden in this droid and it leads to Luke Skywalker. So it's like, okay, so obviously the movie's has something to do with Luke Skywalker, something about finding Luke Skywalker. But no, it kind of switches that, and it turns into the whole, this is about the super duper Death Star and we have to stop it. So they only kind of pick up on the Luke part at the very end of the movie, where it's just this whole kind of silent scene. Of course, all the Star Wars movies ended on silent scenes, and I think this dropped the ball in that respect, where it is a cliffhanger. I mean, I don't care what you say. It's obviously, the thing is, I mean, why did they go through such an extent to that scene just to end it where they ended it? You know what I mean? Because we have, like, I would have loved just like a little bit of dialogue between the two, just a little something. Give her like I don't know, like a glass of water and talk about the weather. I don't care, just something, because obviously I would assume that the next Star Wars movie is not going to literally pick up where literally this left. So she's holding the lightsaber, he's looking shocked, she's like, oh, whoa, oh. Well, it doesn't make that stupid face, but anyway, it's like, obviously he's a man on the mountain, and has his cloak up, and he's doing what all men on the mountains do, which is just waiting and waiting for someone to come, as if he was expecting her this whole time. Well, maybe the Force told him. Yeah. But anyway, it just feels like, hey, let's see you next time. Basically, let's wait for the next movie, and I don't know. I feel that is kind of a cop out, where, I mean, what if they just ended it, she's flying away, boom, the end? Why do they have to do the whole thing where she flies away, she goes up the mountain, it's quiet, it's nice, and then she sees him? I would rather not have him, honestly, I'd rather not have Mark Hamill and Luke Skywalker in the movie at all, as opposed to just having him for like the 2 seconds, which I didn't care for. But that's just me. I think it's the worst ending of any Star Wars movie, that's my opinion, but other people seem to not mind it so much. Other people are okay with the fact that there'll be more, so who cares? Which I guess is true. It's a serial. That's the serial fashion. But at the same time, I kind of think of that, that one guy, like, it was all over social media, like, I have, 1 week to live, I'm a huge Star Wars fan, please, JJ, let me see this movie. And they screened the movie for him. And you kind of wonder, it's like, was he happy about it, or was he sad? He's like, shit, man, I could have seen, there's so much more to see. Now I'm going to die not knowing. That's kind of sucks, but, whatever. It's just kind of, it's it stands for a state of where this series is, where it's like we can't really tell individual stories. We have to sell parts of a story, tell parts of a story. Well, they're interesting slip. Tell parts of a story, and hopefully the people will keep on coming for the next one. Which, I mean, it's Star Wars. People come anyway, so I don't see why we have to have the big cliffhanger or whatever. But again, that's totally just me. So that's just my opinion. I just thought it didn't end perfectly, but in certain respects, it worked okay. And obviously, the movie is, I would say, in watching, I've watched like 100 reviews maybe of this movie. A lot of people really love it, which is great. A lot of people really gushing over it, saying, this is the one I've been waiting for. This is great. In the meantime, though, I think just as with like Phantom Menace, there's gonna be, in the times to come, flaws will kind of stand out a lot more. People will have more kind of universal complaints. That's the thing. There are always, one complaint will kind of like catch like a virus, and then suddenly everyone has the same complaint. So I think we'll see something like that. Not to the extent of the prequels, trust me. But I think people are still getting off their highs, and it's a glorious high. I'll tell you that. It's a fun movie. It really is. But I just felt a little copped out by the ending, and it's kind of clunky in certain areas. The writing isn't that great. It relies heavily on coincidence, like, oh, I coincidentally have this, I coincidentally have this. Characters are completely discarded when they're not needed, such as with the Poe character with Oscar Isaac, who we are believed to have died. Meanwhile, he didn't, and like Finn comes back to him, he's like, I thought you were dead. And he's like, nope. So, okay, great. No, he's like, oh, I got flown from the crash and I looked for you. I couldn't find you. Is that my jacket? And whatever. But I guess it's neither here nor there. I don't know. So it has faults and stuff like that. And it's kind of weird to me, like, in viewing people's reactions to things, because, like, for example, I'm a huge fan of the movie Prometheus, which it definitely is one of those movies that has all these questions and not necessarily answers, and sets up kind of a sequel, which I felt on its own terms, in an overall sense of things, I thought it resolved its story fine. Here with Star Wars, it has those questions that lead up, but not as much. But I don't think it resolved itself too much in a fine way, sort of. I don't know. But it's so weird how people give Prometheus such a hard time, like, without answering all our questions. Meanwhile, with Star Wars, it's like, oh, don't worry, there'll be another one. I don't know. It's so weird. Like, I don't know. There's some hypocritical opinions out there, and I'm sure I have my own hypocritical opinions. This is the worst movie ever. I hate it. I love it. It's the best Star Wars movie. So I don't really know what else to say, like, in terms of spoilers. I feel like this is just kind of, I don't know, train of thought video. If you're still watching this, I mean, you could probably find something better to do. I'm just kind of rambling at this point. There's plenty more to talk about, though, with The Force Awakens. Plenty more spoilers, so maybe I'll, revisit the movie. I've only seen it just the one time so far. It's still kind of resonating on it. I'll definitely see it more, but I think it's a good movie. I think it's a good Star Wars movie, though. I don't know. Like, you think about, like, ranking them, let's say. I'm just so done with that. It's like, okay, the 3 original trilogy movies are the 3 original trilogy movies. Nothing will top them, ever, in my opinion. And they're precious movies to me. Precious movies to a lot of people. Prequels, maybe not loved. I like them. So it's like, let's just say this. There's the original 3 movies, and then there's everything else. So this is a movie that definitely really also kind of relies on the nostalgia, not in as, like, horrible of a way as, say, Jurassic World did, where pretty much the whole movie was, hey, remember Jurassic Park? Wasn't that great? Pretty much. But here it's like we get a lot of that kind of stuff. It's like, hey, it's practical effects, because you love that stuff, right? Look at the puppets. Aren't they cool? Whatever. And there'll be like musical cues from the previous movies. Meanwhile, aside from some parts here and there, this movie didn't have its own distinct music, which was interesting because this is John Williams, as far as I know. I thought originally it was supposed to be Michael Giacchino because he works with JJ in other instances, but I guess not. So I mean, there's that. So there is a lot of reliance on the heavy nostalgia, and needless to say, this is very similar in structure to A New Hope, where you can pretty much make the argument that they're pretty much remaking it, remixing it, reworking it, which is fair enough. But I mean, that's what Lucas himself did with other movies to make Star Wars. So I don't know. What can you do? It feels like its own thing just enough, I think, and has its development just enough that I feel it's not too horribly offensive in that respect. And it's a good movie. It's a good Star Wars movie. I mean, that's how it was designed. This is pretty much calculated to be as Star Warsy as a Star Wars movie can be, I guess. So we have everything that we expect in a Star Wars movie. Fun alien creatures, things like that. Fun adventures, going from planet to planet, true serial type of fashion, type of stuff, as I drone on and on and on about. The great action scenes. There's really fun action scenes in the movie. Like, when they're escaping in the Millennium Falcon and they're going through that derelict Star Destroyer. That was really fun. And good characters. Definitely the new characters are well worth bringing into this franchise. And I think we're in good hands with them, or they're in good hands with us as these Star Wars lovers, basically. I do like the fact that with the new characters, it's something a little bit different. Like with Finn, it's a different kind of state of affairs where, yeah, it's this stormtrooper who kind of defects and he decides, hey, I'm going to do the right thing maybe, and I'm going to go off on my own. So there's some funny stuff here where he's escaping with the great resistance pilot, Oscar Isaac, Poe. He's like, funny thing. He's like, okay, stay calm, stay calm. He's like, I am calm. He's like, no, I'm talking to myself. When he goes back to Captain Phasma, he's like, I'm in charge now. I'm in charge now. He's like, okay, settle down, big deal. Han Solo giving him a little flack, so that's good. And I think Finn is definitely among many highlights of this movie, because one thing with Star Wars, let's if we can talk about the prequels for a second. A lot of people give flack to the whole midichlorian kind of concept, where it's like, oh, so it's really just these little microbes that cause Jedi. Not really, if you really believe in the Force, you can be. Meanwhile, it's like with Star Wars, it's like everybody is everybody's son or daughter or father, niece, nephew, or something. So it's all like a family kind of thing, where it's like, of course, with this movie, we have to make Kylo Ren the villain to give him added depth, added gravitas, added, I don't know, threat to the plot. Make him Han Solo and Leia's daughter, son, but he has very long, lustrous hair, so. But anyway, there's that. So, like, you kind of feel like they just couldn't get just a villain to do it. It has to be this kind of Star Wars thing where Darth Vader is Luke's father, so you have to do that. So I think that bears all the more importance to the Finn character, where I hope, like, by the way, one thing, I had no spoilers going into this movie, but one thing that I thought was spoiled for me was that he was Lando Calrissian's son, which apparently isn't the case. Though it still could be, like you said, like all the other stormtroopers, he was taken away from his family and trained to kill and blah, 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 blah. So maybe we'll find out later that he is, but I hope not. I hope just for once it's like, okay, this normal character can kind of rise to the occasion, and he can wield a lightsaber and do a pretty good job at it, but not as good as a Jedi, so that's just how it is. With Rey, obviously there's huge speculation that she's Luke Skywalker's daughter, which would make sense, and I have a feeling that's kind of where it would go, but at the same time, maybe that's just so obvious that they'll decide not to do that, which would be maybe an interesting move. Maybe she is just a really talented Jedi, which either way, I think I'd be fine with it. So there's that. So other characters like Captain Phasma kind of disappointed people, which I don't know. I wasn't hyped up for Captain Phasma. I knew there were like a lot of action figures, like people like, "Oh, look at this fucking 30-inch Black Series toy I got. Captain Phasma's gonna be the best," and Captain Phasma doesn't do anything. But Gwendolyn Christie, I mean, despite being in a costume. She has presence in the role, very small role that it is. So I thought that was fine. Max von Sydow was a little bit wasted, but at the same time, if we're gonna have someone introduce us to the movie, we're gonna have these two mysterious characters kind of start off the movie. Who better than Max von Sydow? He leaves an impression. I'll give that much. Like, look at, Extremely Loud and Incredibly Close, where he's like in the movie for 20 minutes. He doesn't say a single word of dialogue, gets an Oscar nomination, so he's a treasure. I fucking love Max von Sydow. So I don't know, like with all this Star Wars stuff, it's, it doesn't achieve greatness. This movie, I really don't think that, but at the same time, it's really fun. We have great adventures, and you get what you're looking for in a Star Wars movie. So, I mean, there's that. We have the cutesy robot. We have BB-8, and he's very fun. He's not too overbearing. He's just right. There's the little thumbs up scene, and of course, Chewbacca's back. C-3PO's back again. I'll say my favorite line of all time is, "You probably don't recognize me because of my red arm." Leia's back, and she's actually in the movie a lot less than I thought she would be. I thought she'd be a bigger role, but she survives the day, and she'll probably be back for the sequel. I'm quite sure, and hopefully she can reunite with Luke and her brother, because that's kind of what we thought the plot of the movie was gonna be. That's what the text crawl told us. But instead, it's Super Duper Death Star. We gotta blow it up anyway. But there's a great scene with her where, actually, there's two. You know what? There's three really great scenes with her. One is, when she's reuniting with Han Solo, and even though I think it is kind of a bummer, it's like, oh, they're estranged. They still have that good, the fire's still burning kind of thing. That is a great scene, and they embrace for what would be the last time. Just bring home our son. That was great. And then once Han Solo dies, they cut to her. She just feels it, and that's without going too over the top. That's great. And then finally, she sees Rey that one last time. She's like, "May the Force be with you." I thought that was great. And Carrie Fisher, back with a vengeance, is General Amidala. So I thought she was good. And yeah, I would say it's a satisfying movie in a lot of respects. I just mainly have problems with the ending. I have problems here and there with kind of the way the story is, but you'll have your own expectations. So, in the most general possible way, in the, I don't know, shallowest way possible, this is a good Star Wars movie. So I'll say that. But yeah, that'll do it for my spoiler discussion of The Force Awakens. Again, just rambling on and on and on and on, so hopefully you got some enjoyment out of this. If not, you're probably not watching right now. So if you're still watching, thank you very much. Be sure to check out my other Star Wars reviews. I have reviewed all the 6 movies prior, and I did a spoilerish free review of The Force Awakens as well, so that's a playlist. Check out the link. Until next time, comment, rate, subscribe, all that good stuff, and until next time, if you don't recognize me, it's because of my red arm. So I'll see you later.